Today we have the new winter edition Fuji Apple and Ginger Red Bull. Absolutely delicious. Today we're going to talk about what is slowly becoming, well, not even slowly becoming, what is becoming my favorite lens of all time is the Sigma 135mm f1.4. An absolutely gorgeous new lens from Sigma, and I cannot wait to let you guys in on my first impressions of it from a portrait photographer and kind of giving you the photographer's view of this lens and if you should buy it and if you should upgrade from the 105 f1.4 or jump straight to the 135. Without further ado, let's dive right in. Alright, starting off, we're going to run through the initial specs of this thing just to get those out of the way, and then we'll dive into some more fun stuff, especially shooting with this lens. So starting off, this only comes in this L mount and the Sony E mount, and I have the Sony E mount version here. You obviously have a full frame build as opposed to the 105mm, which was built for the DSLRs back when it was made. This is designed for the new mirrorless cameras, which is very nice. You have 17 elements and 13 groups, 4 FLDs, and 2 aspherical elements. You have an 18.2 angle of view, well, field of view, angle of view, kind of the same thing. But basically, that's pretty tight. 135mm is going to be on that more telephoto lens as opposed to maybe a portrait lens normally would be, like in that 50, 85, 105 range. 135 is a pretty long reach for a lens. You do have 13 rounded diaphragm, also known as a 13 bladed aperture, and the maximum aperture is f16, just like the 85mm f1.4. This is a f1.4 all the way up to an f16 lens. The maximum magnification ratio is 1:6:9, so it's not extremely close and it's not a macro lens whatsoever. However, if you do want to shoot ring shots, you can do it, stop it down to f8, and you get beautifully tack sharp photos. You have a 105mm filter thread up front, which is absolutely huge, and just like the 105mm f1.4, it is still 105mm even on the brand new 135. This does come in about a pound lighter than the 105mm f1.4 from Sigma. However, it still does weigh a whopping 1,420 grams, as opposed to the Sigma 105 coming in at 1,100 grams. So this one is substantially lighter. Now, will you feel the difference? Yes, when shooting with them, I've shot weddings, I've shot portraits with the 105mm, and over time, either on a peak design capture clip or on my dual camera strap, you do feel the weight of it. Your wrist does start to hurt when you shoot with it. However, if you're just doing an hour portrait session, which I normally would do, you don't feel that big of a difference. And honestly, it's nice to have about a pound less of weight. However, you don't notice that big of a difference if you're shooting for short times. Now, if you are shooting your weddings, if you are shooting quinceañeras or doing anything longer, you will notice the difference and you will appreciate it. I am very excited that Sigma was able to get 30 more millimeters out of this lens and still keep the weight even lower and have it even smaller than the previous version, being the 105mm. Now, I say previous version because the 105mm was in a complete league of its own. There was nothing ever like it, and I speculated that Sigma would release a 105mm Mark II, but I think this is their kind of rebound from that 105mm Mark II version. This is their Mark II being at 135mm, not at 105mm. I highly doubt we'll actually get an f1.4 105mm Mark II. I think this is kind of their version of the Mark II, and I'm very happy with it, and I don't think there's going to be any complaints not having a Mark II version of that lens. Now, that's kind of just a very quick overview and specs of this lens, and I want to dive in a little bit more on the actual ergonomics of this lens. As usual, talk about how it feels, and then we'll go out into the field, shoot with it, and obviously we'll jump into the Lightroom and check out some of the images. So if you want to skip into some of those different areas that you're really curious about, then please do skip through this video, find you what you're looking for. But right now we're going to dive into the ergonomics of this lens and how it feels while shooting. Now, starting from the top and working our way back, obviously we have the lens hood. Now, this lens hood is something special. If you guys know, the 105mm f1.4 from Sigma had a screw-on lens hood, which absolutely annoyed the heck out of me. You would have to get it on, make sure it's flat and flush, and then screw it on, and it would just be a pain. It would fall off, honestly, quite often, and it never felt secure. So, Sigma listened to us, and they made it to where it is just a normal lens hood. It has the button to click, you just slide it on, and you twist, and boom, it locks into place, and it works amazing. I'm so happy about this, and this is honestly one of my favorite features of this lens. Apart from that, the lens hood obviously is 105mm, and it does have a nice little rubber piece up front, so you can set the lens down on its front. It's not going to slide anywhere, and it won't scratch anything. So it's very nice to have that, and feels extremely sturdy. Moving in from the front to the back, obviously you have the 105mm filter thread, which is quite large, and that absolutely gorgeous front element of that glass. Moving back into that, you have a little bit of space, and then you come into the focus ring. The focus ring is extremely smooth and feels very nice to move. It is a little bit looser than I might have expected, but it does feel nice and smooth, and you would have no problems pulling focus and doing it smoothly as well. Moving in back from that, you come into the buttons, switches kind of ring of this lens. There is a nice grippy feel on the sides of the lens, and then as you come into the top of it, you do see the buttons that you can press. These are completely programmable buttons, so if you just push them and hold it or whatever you feel like doing, you can program that in the camera body itself. And I have mine to be a spot focus, so I can have a little dot that I want to focus on, and it'll just take away from having a large focus area if I wanted to focus on something very specific. And the camera body itself was not focusing on what I wanted to. I could just have a spot focus point and move the autofocus exactly where I wanted. Now, moving down from that, you obviously have the autofocus to manual focus, which is nothing special. It feels nice, it sounds nice, autofocus to manual focus. We all know that. Now, one of the more interesting things about this is it has a declickable aperture ring, which is very nice. I don't know why they added that. It's just one of those cool little features. Maybe for video, it'll be nice to be able to move the iris without having any clicks, but you do have a declickable and clickable aperture ring, obviously from f1.4 to f16. Now, moving on from that, you have the tripod collar, which is a Arca Swiss mount, obviously with a 3/16 down below, just like every other lens. And then you do have those little white lines to line up your tripod collar. Now, I wish that they would have made it so that it would have had some kind of tactile feel. I really, really wish that there would be an actual mark that you could feel that would lock it into place to let me know that it is straight up and down or 90 degrees, whatever it may be, other than just having to eyeball it and make sure those white lines are lined up. And you can remove the tripod collar if you wanted to, but for now, I'll just leave it on. And now moving back from that, obviously you have the lens cap and whatever mount you get, either the Sony E or the L mount. It is weather sealed, however, it doesn't have the rubber sealing like some of the other G Master lenses like the 7200 or the 2870 f2. It doesn't have that. The weather sealing is good from what I've heard, although it doesn't have any of the rubber sealing like some of the G Master lenses have. It is good enough to shoot out in the rain. I don't suggest being stupid with it, but just be safe with it. Just like any other camera body or any other lens, you would want to be safe and keep it out of the elements. But if you do get yourself stuck in some rain, it will be fine. The weather sealing is going to be a-okay. Now, that's enough of the talking. Let's head outside, shoot with it, get some more initial first shooting impressions, and then we'll jump into Lightroom and check out some of the images that I captured. Okay, so while shooting with this lens, I want to talk a little bit about how it feels while shooting. Now, you can see I am shooting mostly vertical photos in this, and using the tripod collar, rotating it so it's vertical, honestly feels really nice in the hand. Even when shooting horizontal, I can rest my thumb on the side of the tripod collar and it feels very stable. The tripod collar with my Choreo strap down at the bottom of it to clipped to my harness. You do feel it, which honestly isn't a good honest review of it, but the tripod collar does feel really good, and it's like right in the center of the mass of the actual lens, so it feels extremely balanced, and it feels really nice to shoot with. It is a little bit heavy, but again, most of that weight is going to be towards the back of the lens, like near the lens mount, so it feels really nice to shoot with, and it is very easy to move around. It doesn't feel like you are whipping around a big lens. It feels comfortable to shoot with, and it's nice to use. So yeah, I'm gonna shut up for a little bit, let you guys watch some of this shooting, and then we'll jump into Lightroom. Cool. This is such a fun little area. Let's mess around over here. Yeah, right there. That's perfect. There. Oh yeah. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, and 2, 1, 2, and then just look directly off and a little bit chin up for me. Yeah. 1, 2. Yeah. 1 and 2. Perfect. And then look dead straight at me. 1 and 2. And one more. 1 and 2. 1. And now I want to really test. So yeah, just come like right there. Yeah, and then just lean into it a lot. Just gonna get a tighter headshot. 1, 2. Wow. 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, and 2. Perfect. And then come like more forward. I'm gonna shoot from like right here and then face this way. I wanna try to make some, oh yeah, actually right there will work. Actually a little bit more forward. And then you're gonna kind of like a fake step, just one in front of the other, if that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's so good. And 1 and 2. Nice. 1, 2, 1 and 2. 1, 2. Perfect. Nice. Yeah, this lens is so nice. Like look how sharp. It's crazy.
Wow.
Alright, what is up guys, and welcome back. We are back in my office and we are going to dive into some of these photos here. I do have like 19 or 20 of them that I wanted to dive through just because I enjoyed them and I wanted to show you some of the characteristics of this lens. But I love this lens. I'm really excited that I have it. I'm really excited that I get to use it. And I think that this lens is going to stay in my camera bag for the foreseeable future. It's really, really tack sharp. The autofocus is amazing. And yes, it's heavy. That's the only drawback to it. But other than that, it's really nice. There is a little bit of vignetting in the corners, which I will let you guys see, which could be a concern, but I don't mind vignetting. It's not the worst thing that's ever happened to a lens, and it can be pretty easily corrected. So let's dive into OBS Studio and check out some of the images. Okay, so first off, we're gonna dive off right when I got in the lens. I tested out 2 photos on just myself, and we'll kind of go chronologically. So here is the first image, and we're gonna take a look at it without any color correction. So we'll look at the raw photo. Obviously, it was a little bit overexposed. My fiance was shooting it, and she did do a great job. I was the one who set all the settings, so technically it was my fault. But we'll come into my color correction just so it can kind of, visually see it. But this was at f1.4 1/2500th of a second at ISO 100. And this lens wide open is extremely sharp. Coming all the way into my face, you can just see how sharp this lens is. All the way down into my shirt and shorts in the front of my grill, you can see my big mouth ram air intake there. It is just a really sharp lens. Now, this is one of those photos that I wanted to look at because of this, a little bit of this like off colorage in my shirt. So this shirt is a Lululemon like long sleeve shirt, and I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but it's dark, almost black, and it has like lines going through it. And in a lot of camera lenses and a lot of images, it will look like it's giving off a purple or green tint. And if you really, really closely look, you can see some of that like green coming out, but honestly it's not too bad, and I wore this shirt on purpose to test if it would bring those colors out, and it did a great job, which is kind of in that chromatic aberration realm of things, and I think it did a great job controlling that. And you can see as well on my necklace, there really is no chromatic aberrations on that. Now obviously the bokeh is going to be absolutely gorgeous, and you can see some of that vignetting that I was talking about up in these corners, and down here you can see that it gets a little bit darker as you round out into these sides, which isn't horrible, and I actually left it in my color grade, so not that big of a deal. Now moving on into a little bit more of a studio shot to show how sharp this lens truly is. This was at my house with 2 flashes, and I did a headshot. So we were at F4, 1/250th of a second, in ISO 100. Sorry, I stumbled across those words, but 1/250th of a second, F4, ISO 100. Now, not even at F8, this lens is so tack sharp. If we look right into my eyes, you can just see every little pore, every bad thing about my skin, and just how distinctly sharp this is. And you can see it caught my eye right here, and then this eye is even falling off a little bit, and you can really tell on my nose, like right here on my nose is extremely sharp, and then it like kind of falls off into it. But at F4, all of my face is basically sharp, and just incredible how it picks up every single hair. And if we come down into my very furry cardigan, you can see every little bit of like fur on this cardigan, which is amazing. And again, I wore this cardigan to figure out if this would give me any sort of chromatic aberrations, and it did. You can see that there is a little bit of purple fringing on these individual little pieces. Now, that is pixel peeping to the max. Like, no one's ever going to notice that unless you go into like 500% on one of these images, which I'm going to do because I want to give you guys the most honest review of this lens. Sigma does not sponsor me. They didn't send me the lens. I'm going strictly off of what I think of this lens and the things I see. So, completely unbiased. Yes, there's going to be a little bit of fringing and chromatic aberrations right on those really dark spots, but as you come up into kind of the top where there is a little bit more light from that rim light, there isn't that much of it. And obviously this shoulder fell off into the bokeh-licious of 135, but there isn't really that bad of any, except for when there is a really, really dark surface and it's extremely fuzzy, which kind of was the worst thing for this lens, or any lens to test on. But this is kind of the shirt that I test it with because it gives me the most honest reviews and the most honest look. But that's not that bad. Zoomed out, you would never really notice it at all. It still looks amazing, and the sharpness of this lens is really, really good. So we're going to move on into some sports. Now, 135mm is a great focal length for certain sports. I would say for soccer, it's amazing, which is what I shot. So my first shot, you can see that this is absolutely amazing colors. I'm going to turn this back into the raw shot. This is the raw shot. Definitely right off the bat, you can see this vignetting right down here in this corner. It's very apparent from this greener, lighter grass into the darker areas where you do have that corner vignetting, which realistically, it's not even that bad. I don't notice it that often, and when I do place a preset on it, I think it makes it look amazing. So if we were to go back and with my edits, that's my edit, looks good, amazing. Obviously the tack sharpness of this lens, every single curl on his face, and it is amazing. I shot this at 1/800th of a second f1.4 ISO 100, and it was around 5 o'clock, so the sun was starting to set, and being able to shoot a prime lens at a sporting event is a huge plus because most sporting events are after school, especially high school events. And now when we're getting into those winter months, fall months, the sun is setting around 5:30, you are able to open up your aperture to f1.4 and let in so much light that you do not have to crank up your ISO. Now, with newer camera bodies, yes, you can crank ISO. However, you always want to be as low as possible. So being able to use an f1.4 lens is amazing, and you get to have the most shutter speed without sacrificing your ISO. So shooting wide open at f1.4 ISO 100, provides beautiful images, beautiful bokeh, really, really nice. Coming into Mr. Coach Kevin Sanchez, absolute amazing coach. Obviously, we're still at f1.4 ISO 100, shutter speed of 1/800th of a second. Now, this bokeh from one of those lights up there is what I wanted to focus on, because you do see a little bit more of that cat's eye. This is very up in the corner, very up at the top, and you do see some of that cat's eye. However, it's still extremely smooth bokeh. The only issue is that it is a little bit of a cat's eye, not a perfectly round circle, which we will take a look at more of the bokeh. But that is one of the things that I did notice. Up in the extremity corners, you would get a little bit of a cat's eye, but it's not that big of a deal. If it is a big of a deal to you, then obviously don't get this lens. To me, still looks really good, and obviously his face is going to be extremely tack sharp. Colors look good. There is still a little bit of this vignetting in the corners, per usual. But here, you can see just how nice this bokeh is. This is 1/1250th of a second, f1.4 ISO 100. And you can see, obviously, he is tack sharp, and the background just melts away. This is why I love shooting at f1.4. I love prime lenses for sporting events because of just how nice they make the players look. And as well as here, just another really nice shot. The background separation really makes my player pop out, and you can see it is tack sharp all the way across the body. And being at 5 o'clock at night, still keep a really high shutter speed, and it provides amazing images. Again, really nice corner kick. Actually scored on this shot, and still in a nice image. Now look at this. We have golden hour, and look at this bokeh in the background. It handled sun flares extremely well, and this was almost shooting directly into the sun without a lens hood. And I really wanted to test out the platings and glare protection, all of that stuff in the actual elements of the lenses, and it did a great job controlling the glare. Now obviously it's going to be very hard to expose correctly on a shot like this, but the coach looks amazing. His eye is super sharp, and you can see right here that sun peeking out from him, and it handled it extremely well. There's no really heavy lens flares or anything like that, which I'm very shocked by and very happy by, that they were able to control lens flares like that without a lens hood, just in the elements of the glass. So now I'm going to dive into just another really quick shot that I did with a model. One of my models, Katie. You might have seen some of the video clips from it if I like them. But this shot obviously was at the beach, and I used a off-camera flash to kind of bring her out and get a little bit of a catch light in her eye. But again, this lens is so sharp, and it renders skin tones beautifully. It renders the, just the realness of her face, which is really nice. And the colors are very color accurate. That's always been a huge plus of Sigma lenses, is that they're always going to be pretty accurate. Even as opposed to Sony native lenses, they're very good. And obviously I shot it backlit, and you can see a little bit of the sun peeking out from under her arm, and still no lens flares at all. Handles it really, really well. Moving on, obviously one of my favorite cars of all time, the Lotus Emira. This is color graded. There is a mask here, but you can see right on the wheel, it is extremely sharp, and there is just a little bit of fringing on this very deep blue car, on the silver wheels, which it gets reflected off of the ground up into the wheels and just all over. On the black tire, there is a little bit of that blue, which is a reflection of the paint onto the wheels, but also a little bit onto the rims. You can see a little bit of that blue tone coming out. Now, that also is, not the lens's fault. That's just being reflected in the sun from the paint job, but that is there, and it's not a lens error. It is also a little bit of the paint, sun, shooting outdoors error. Now, obviously, this bokeh back here is very smooth, and you can see they're almost perfect circles right there. But as you do come up into the top, you get a little bit more of a cat's eye, but still, once again, bokeh is beautiful. Now we're getting into some of those images that you watch the videos of with Miss Skylar. These are really good. I love them all. And then we actually did go to the beach after and shot a few photos of her with bathing suits on for company. And I'm really excited to show you those. The bokeh is beautiful. But let's dive into this dress. First off, yes, some of them did start falling off mid-photo shoot, which it's okay. I edited them, but I did the best I could. And this is, concerning the lens, not the photos. So I will fix it later. But obviously the lens is still extremely sharp. There was no flash with this, so we're really testing out the dynamic range of one, the A7IV, but also the lens handled it really well. The bokeh, obviously, you can see here, they're really, really nice, smooth bokeh, smooth circles, and the background just melts away, which is absolutely amazing. Moving on, again, the bokeh, the separation, the background separation, the depth of field, not much more to say than that. That's why you buy a prime lens, especially a telephoto 135/85. Like, you want the bokeh, background separation, the compression is beautiful. Again, here we go. You can see from this railing all the way up into her arm just how smooth that transition is. And all of her jewelry down here, there is no color fringing, there's no chromatic aberrations, there's nothing like that, which is very surprising. Obviously her face is going to be extremely sharp. Just a cool image in all, and at 135 it looks very nice. Now moving on to a few more shots, we have obviously her with the dress still, and up in front I was actually shooting through a bed of flowers, and you can just see that they melted away and it still looks amazing. And just a really good image. Not much more to say than that. Now this is where it gets interesting with how the greens look, which greens are the hardest color, I think, to replicate in a lens, and that is why I liked messing around with all of these greens. Obviously there's not going to be a lot of bokeh because she's right up against it, but they still look amazing. She is extremely tack sharp, obviously, and I was shooting at 1/2500th of a second, f1.4 ISO 100, an amazingly tack sharp image, and the greens look amazing. And that is with my color grade, but if we were to look at the raw image, they still look nice. Obviously my color grade is going to bring out a lot more of those greens, and if you want my presets, they are going to be in the description below, but still amazing. The colors look great. Now obviously you can see back here, this bokeh is just perfectly round. Using some more of these leaves as my foreground, they just melt away and it looks amazing. And even shooting into like the bathroom, like this was one of those like shower areas, it still is amazing image. The background separation in the bokeh makes it to where it's usable, and she is still amazingly tack sharp. And shooting in these winds makes that hair blow. Again, very nice image. The bokeh looks amazing per usual. Now, moving on to a little bit more studio-esque headshot. I shot with Peach by Pump, which is a new gym opening up down in Naples. And this is one of the owners, Miss Valerie. I shot this as I would any headshot at f8, ISO 100 and 1/250th of a second. Metered all of my lights, which I had 3, and then you get images like this. And now this shows the sharpness of this lens. At f8, this lens is so sharp. It is truly amazing, and the colors look amazing. At f8, there is no color fringing at all. And then we also have another one of the trainers, and you can see just how sharp this lens is. You can even see my tripod in her eye, which is truly amazing. And I had a rim light, I had a key light right up here, and my fill light was down here. And you get amazing headshots just like this. And on her necklace, there is no color fringing at all. It is amazing. And this lens, I must say, is truly impressive. Alright, so there you have it. I would say this lens is a solid upgrade from the 105. It is obviously 30 more millimeters, meaning you have a little bit more compression, a little bit more reach. The autofocus is amazing, and it holds up even in sporting events like soccer and volleyball. It tracked my subject amazing, and it caught their face or even their eye while moving quickly. The sharpness, obviously, you saw yourself. This lens is tack sharp all the way through, even wide open at f1.4. The chromatic aberrations and the lens flares and all of that fun stuff, there is going to be a little bit if you pixel peep at it, even in my, black sweater or in some of those weirder environments, you will get a little bit of it, but it's not that big of a deal if you really do think about it. No one is going to really look that closely at an image. Yes, if you are doing really high studio photography, look out for it. But if you are seriously doing high studio photography, I don't think you'll be shooting on a second, party lens. I think you'd go for something more of the Sony native lenses. They are going to be a little bit sharper just because they are G Master Glass. Sony makes amazing lenses. But for $1,600, this lens performs amazing. It controls lens flares amazing. It controls chromatic aberrations. The vignetting is very, very minimal, and it controls that amazing as well. And obviously the bokeh is really good. It's really smooth with a 13 bladed aperture or 11 bladed aperture. It's really smooth. In the corners you do get a little bit of cat's eye, but still it is extremely smooth even in that cat's eye form. So should you upgrade from the 105 f1.4? Well, there's going to be three things that kind of determine that for you. One, do you need a faster autofocus? If you shoot sports with it, then yes, absolutely upgrade. But if you're just shooting portraits, headshots, stuff like that, honestly, no, you don't need the 135. Being at 105 is enough compression, and honestly, you don't need to be that far away from your model so you're not screaming at them. But it is nice to have that, and obviously it is going to be a little bit sharper, and the autofocus will always catch that eye perfectly. Now, the third reason that you should upgrade is, well, it's new. It's lighter, and it's something different. So this lens is almost a pound lighter than the 105mm, which is nice. If you do end up shooting a wedding with it or any longer form shoots, even sporting events, you do feel the weight of this lens. When I was shooting in the gym, as well as with my model Skylar, I did feel the weight of the lens a little bit. And being able to have a lighter lens than the 105 is nice. It is heavy. It's by no means a small light lens that you can just toss in your carry bag and carry around. But compared to the 105, which I'm very versed in and I shoot with it a lot, it is definitely lighter and it is definitely noticeable. So if you shoot longer events with the 105, I would consider getting the 135 just for it being smaller and lighter than it other is. So if you don't have any of those lenses, should you get this lens? If you need a longer telephoto prime lens, I would say the 135 1.4 is definitely the lens to go. Now, it has the 1.8 as well from Sigma, from Sony, and those are also amazing lenses as well. Now, obviously, you're going to have a stop less of light from the 1.8s as opposed to the 1.4, and they are going to be a lot smaller. So if you're not worried about 0.4, that aperture, f1.4 to f1.8, then absolutely get the 135 1.8s because they are a lot lighter. And the Sony one is extremely sharp because it is Sony native glass, but the Sigma one is also sharp as well. It is just a little bit older. So the determining factor is, do you need that extra stop of light, and do you need the Sigma 1.4, or is it okay to have a 1.8 lens and you prioritize traveling over f1.4? So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. But yes, this lens is absolutely amazing. I am so excited that Sigma finally released a second version of the 105, which this is the second version of the 105, and it will be staying in my camera bag. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, drop a like, subscribe. Tell me what you guys think of this lens, if you've even tried it, and if you do plan on getting it, or if you have bought it, let me know what you think. I hope you guys have a good one. As always, peace. God bless y'all, and happy fall.